All right. For every lesson of refusing the false choice between safety and ambition, there's a reminder that legacy can hold both caution and courage at once. For every warning that institutions may take good work and make it theirs, there is a challenge to protect purpose with strategy. Why are you looking at me like that, Dad? I'm trying to do my thing here, and you're just
that, that's that sounds very corporate.
yes,
That's good.
because yeah, we're getting through. We got to figure it out. We're talking about a lot in today's podcast. Well, you're just staring at
Yeah.
me. I'm just seeing you stare. You gotta give confidence,
Because
Dad.
I'm wondering, okay, where is he going with this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Basically, there's a
Okay.
lot of stuff that we're going to talk about. We have five signature segments, and so that's what we're going to get into. So,
Yeah.
so what I was going to mention, which I'm not going to do it anymore after my dad has shattered the confidence he was supposed to instill in me at this point.
Right.
But
It's,
I'll
it's fine.
continue with the last part. So, those were meant to be the underlying themes. Left unaddressed, they fracture generations into silence, suspicion, or exhaustion, or they push us to build generational bridges that carry legacy forward and ignite a future worth inheriting. And guess what? You are here to help us do just that. But before you start, as a great and wonderful soul you are, I'm sure you'd at least like to know our names. I go by Roy Dell Clark the second. I'm here with my dad, Roy Dell Clark Sr. Together, we take up the challenge of building generational. See, you just threw me off, Dad.
We go on.
No, generational
These
bridges
things.
through our five signature segments, the affinity stones of this podcast. Each segment carries a piece of our vision to fuse elder wisdom and youthful insight into a guiding star for generations to come. As always, thank you for volunteering, for letting us volunteer your time at today's table. Today, you serve as our honorary brother, sister. Yes, that's what it is. Today, you serve as our honorary brother, sister, son, daughter, parent, grandparent, friend, and or colleague, while also stepping in as the unofficial referee for these discussions. As you know, family debates can run hot, and father-son dialogue is no exception. That is why we look to you to bring the missing perspective to transform these generational gaps into generational bridges. Welcome to the Generational Gap Bridging the Gap podcast. Without further ado, let's bridge these gaps. Okay, this is episode 2 where we try things, Dad. We try things. How are you doing
Yeah.
today?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm good. This is
Okay.
this is. It seems like second episode, but we've been through a lot of different episodes trying to make this as good as it possibly can be for the first round of
Yeah.
this, because it's going to be iterating and getting better and better. So this is our first attempt on
Yeah.
this.
Exactly. There's a lot. There's a lot of work. A lot of test trials, and so I'm cool with this video so far. We're gonna get it figured out. We can't judge ourselves too hard on the first one. Um, so today's podcast, well, the Generation Gap podcast, Bridging the Gap, we're kind of going to introduce a bit more of the format, the five different segments. So that is legacy and lessons, value and ventures, health and harmony, foundations and frameworks, and culture and connection. Each of them will help you be able to find different information. We're not going to talk about all of the podcasts here, but what we are going to do is introduce you to the info cards. You can pause the video here if you'd like, and I'll give you a good understanding of what it is and like a snapshot or overview of what we look to achieve within this part. So, to start us off, for the first discussion, we are going to take a look at Dad legacy and lessons. So let's move over there. And again, for those of you guys that are new, here is the legacy and lessons info card to give you a bit of a sense of what's going on. So today's topic for the info card is from a video we'll check out in a sec, but I'll give you the topic title. So who told us? You ready, Dad? So the topic
Yeah.
title is, let me put the info card away. Who told us we had to pick one when yes and yes was always an option? Okay,
Okay. That makes,
right?
yeah, that
So who
makes
told
sense.
us to? So that idea of
Right.
there's two
Mutually exclusive
mutually exactly.
exclusivity each time something that's one thing to happen. For one thing to be true, the other has to be false. Sometimes
There
both of
you go.
those
Right.
things are
So
true.
here's this. So here's the hook that we're gonna introduce as for
Yeah.
context. So some of us were raised to believe success means sacrifice. Pick the safe route or the risky one, but never both. But what if that framing was the real limitation? Right? There's a quiet power in asking why not both, not because it's easy, but because some legacies are built by refusing to see the world in either or. So we're going to take out the YouTube short that is.
Do I prioritize
that inspired that topic? So we'll take a look at it here and then we'll get into the conversation.
investing or building an emergency fund? What would you prioritize your savings on, emergency fund and investment? My answer is yes. I have this philosophy called yes and yes. And I first noticed it when I was in high school. And I remember I got these college applications from all these colleges, and they have an FAQ at the end. And these were pretty selective colleges. And they would say, question, should I take the easier class and get an A, or should I take the harder class and get a B? That was the question. And the college's answer was, well, we always encourage students to take the more challenging class, but in our experience, the students who come here take the more challenging class and they get an A. And I was just like, oh my God, bow down. I respect that. Because they're just saying, look, we're looking for the best. And the best tend to do yes and yes. So sometimes when I hear people say, should I do A or B? My answer is just yes. Do I prioritize investing or building?
So that is a short.
That's deep.
Yeah. So that is the first short. So for context. So again, just to bring back the topic, again, who told us we had to pick one? Yes and yes, when yes and yes was always an option. So we'll start off the conversation, Dad, with me asking you this question. Were you ever told to play it safe and even when you felt capable of more? So I'll ask that again. Were you ever told to play it safe even when you felt capable of more?
Okay. That's very well. I think maybe not directly, but indirectly, my entire life, people have been telling me to take it safe. Like, for example, I'll give an example. Like, growing up in school, I kind of learned anything pretty quickly. So most people, even my teacher was saying, you need to become a doctor, when I wanted to learn how to trade and to invest, right? Because doctor somehow, especially in the Caribbean or maybe even Africa, I don't want to speak for the Africans who are living in Africa, but I can speak maybe more clearly for Jamaicans. Like, most of our parents and even my teacher at the time would want to say, yeah, you need to become a doctor, even though I wanted to learn finance and try to predict the market and things like that. So I think that my entire life, even though it's not, I can't remember somebody directly trying to tell me what to do outside, one of my teachers, Sister Philomena, that says, you're so good in physics and chemistry, you should probably become a doctor or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. But I think the entire life experience is usually telling you that indirectly, or you're absorbing that through osmosis.
And I think is that a Canadian experience? Is there a Western experience? Is it different in Jamaica? I feel like, again, for someone who hasn't traveled too much outside of Canada and the United States, when it comes to the yes and yes, I agree with the indirect stuff. So for example, I grew up playing sports, great, you're in that category. But the moment you start venturing into other sorts of ventures, all of a sudden now you're hearing, oh, just relax, you're doing too much now. I was always tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it, because I remember when I was in business school for university, and I started to work on my ventures day in, day out. People would see me go to the library, go to the cafe, go to a coffee shop and work on my stuff, and they would ask me about it. They said, man, just relax. You're doing well, but just take it easy. But guess what? Guess where I never heard that? In the gym. When I was the first one in the gym and the last one to leave.
Yeah.
He's the example. Follow Roy. Call out, standing ovations. Look, he's the first one in, last one to leave. Nobody cares. I spent my whole life playing sports. All of a sudden, that's all that you do. But the moment you start getting into other ventures and areas, and it's not necessarily a racial thing, though there's that aspect of it, we can get into that. But it's the idea that when you start doing things that a lot of people think is complicated or it's hard for them to do, they start projecting that onto you and try to
Okay.
bring you back in to focus you and be like, hey man, you know, there's no need for that. When in actuality, a lot of those things, the
Yes.
yes and yes, is required, right? So the idea, and that's one of the
Yeah.
things I look to instill in my kids, which I think you've done that too. The idea that you don't have to accept what is told to you. And actually, I think one of the interesting things that you had done growing up is that you made us challenge even your authority, which sounds
Right. And your mother.
counter, yeah, and
It's
also it sounds counterintuitive to
yeah.
raise your kids to challenge you when really, as a parent, you want to obviously have your kids have certain values, but selfishly and unselfishly in some aspects, you don't want to make your life hard. And I think for a lot of parents, one of the things that makes their life hard is their kids challenging them or not listening to them. And I feel like they think that not listening to them and empowering your kids, they want to, parents, a lot of parents want to empower their kids to the point, but up to the point actually, where they're not challenging them, which
Yeah.
is, it's a weird balance to have when in actuality, you have to be okay with the challenge. And that's what you should
Yeah.
invite. And that's the idea. And the reason I bring it back to the topic of yes and yes is because it is that mindset that when you're looking at a university or you're looking at picking your courses, instead of looking at math as a hard subject, I'm not going to take it. Let me take an arts course. And there are a lot of arts courses that are hard. English is a hard course, for example.
Right.
As an
Right.
academic advisor, so I understand there's a course Psych 101
Yeah.
people think is easy. It's not easy. These are some of the
Yeah.
harder courses that you can take, but the perception is that when you look at those courses, you may choose a an art course over a science course, computer science course, or a math course because you think it's easy, because you think you can get a better grade. Where that's a whole different frame of mind for those that were raised to question what is around them and to learn from everything.
Yeah.
Then you'll be able to look at certain subjects and say, you know what, I'm going to take the harder course and I'm going to do well. Why? Because the confidence is
Yeah.
not in the course and your perceived difficulty of the course. The confidence is your ability to problem solve, that you've
Yeah.
challenged things and you know how to learn. And that's where the yes and yes mindset to me comes from. And I think I grew
Right.
up a little bit with that as well.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you
Yeah.
something.
If
Well, go ahead. Yeah.
I just want to say, I just don't want to move too far from the yes and yes, because while I agree with yes and yes, we have to be very careful that we don't stop and say yes and yes, because sometimes the correct answer is no and no, or yes and no, right? Because there are times when like you and I have a discussion recently, and I think it's relevant to this one earlier this week, where I'm saying whenever you say yes to something, you're also simultaneously saying no to other things,
Yes.
right?
You did say
So
that earlier this week.
right. So when you're saying yes and yes, we have to make sure that we're talking about in a very confined context. Yes and yes can make a lot of sense, but sometimes yes and no, or no and no, is equally as good as yes and yes. So we have to be careful we don't get to the bias
So
of
give an example of what you
linking
mean.
yes.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'm
well,
I'm following, but
yeah, okay.
yeah.
I'll give you an example. So imagine that you don't, somebody's telling you that, okay, you should take math because math is very important, and a mathematical mind is required for a lot of different things. And imagine that you wanted to go into law. So and then physics is just close to math as possible, because if you, chances sometimes there's a high correlation, close to 1. If you're good at math, chances are you'll do a lot better in physics, for example. But you want to go in law. So maybe when you said no to math because you already have the basic math and you don't want to take the advanced math because you're not going to that path, you can take that on your own. Maybe you should also say no to physics. That's an example of saying no to no, when no and no is also correct.
Right.
Right? As correct as yes and yes. So it depends on the path, and it's context driven. So I think one of the things what we have to do, if somebody said yes and yes, we have to say, Why? Right?
Mm-hmm.
For what purpose? For what purpose that yes and yes? So I would challenge that guy a little bit. I'm not saying that I agree the essence that there are a lot of times when yes and yes, I can do this well,
Mm-hmm.
and I can also do that other thing as well. Not because people just think that one is mutually exclusive to the other. Sometimes that's not the case. But there are times when we need to say no and no. And the final thing before you come back, and I want to hear what you have to say here,
Mm-hmm.
is there are times when yes and no is also equal. Very important, because every time I say yes to somebody, I'm saying no to talking to one of my kids, right? Equally. So if you're present, if you're just present, you have the presence of mind to recognize that every time you say yes, you better ask yourself, what am I willing to say no to? Because if you kind of go without saying, recognize that you're also saying no to something else. If I,
Mm-hmm.
for example, this podcast, if I say yes to this podcast, there's several other
Yes,
things
to
I'm
doing
saying
the
no.
podcast.
Huh?
Yes,
No,
what do you
just
mean?
to do it.
Right, right.
Like, so when we've decided, so yes, we're going to go ahead and do this, I'm going to have to say, okay, there's a couple other things that I'm going to have to say no to because of the amount of work and
Mm-hmm.
focus and right. So yes and no, yes and yes, and no and no, and sometimes it's a set, and we have to make sure that we're present to make sure that we know which one of those set is better for our life and success. That's what I want to add to
Right.
that.
And I agree with that. So here's my thing with that the weight of I believe that the weight of no, I agree with what you're saying. The weight of no is important. And I think a lot of people don't really see it that way as far as when you say yes. I know intuitively, and I kind of mentioned this before, intuitively we understand the idea of opportunity cost, that if you do one thing and if somebody brings this up to you, if you do one thing, then you can't do that. It's like, oh, well, thank you, Captain Obvious, right? Like if you're going to
Yes.
take a plane to
Yeah.
Jamaica, you're not going to take that same plane and go to Mexico. Like that's not
Right.
right. The
Exactly.
mutually exclusivity part of it, right, and the
Yeah. Yeah.
opportunity cost of it. But the idea
Yeah.
to again, the difference that is the difference, right? To
Yeah.
really understand that when I'm going to say yes to you, I'm saying no to everyone else. Why is that valuable? I think it's a valuable insight because a lot of people have trouble saying no. And apparently there's all these
Hmm.
studies that are out there that say, a lot of people are much more happy in life, uh, or gratified when they're able to say no to things. Why? Because they're not committing to things that they themselves don't feel like they want to do or they need to do or what have you, right? All those reasons. So I
Yeah.
say that
Yeah.
because they're scared to say no, the people pleaser archetype. If they were to understand this insight here, I would think that they would realize that they're saying no every time they say yes. And I know
Oh, yeah.
you see the
Yeah.
insight.
Yeah.
And I think,
Right. Right.
and as a
Right.
matter of
Right.
fact, not
Right.
only are you saying yes, but you're saying no
Yep.
8 times for every yes that you're saying.
And okay.
And
Yes.
the
Yes.
no is actually weighing. It's more effortful to say no than it is to say yes. So even if it was just a 1-to-1, it's already important. I think you get what I'm saying with that. But
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
so for the people pleaser, that insight really can change the game for them, and especially if those research studies are at all, you could put any weight to it, any validity to it, then that makes sense. Now you're living a happier life because you realize that I'm saying no 8 times right now in order to say yes
Right.
to you. But
I didn't think about it that way.
vice versa, right? But vice
Yep.
versa, big brain dad. But vice
Big
versa,
brain.
no, but vice versa, you have the person that you might have been saying yes to. If they understand that you're saying no to all these other things, again, they understand that you could be doing other
Yeah.
things. But if you're able to articulate to them that, I'm going to do this. I was going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. but I'm going to put that aside. I'm going to do this. If you don't have to say it in such a robust manner, but they all of a sudden appreciate your time more, and it just all
Okay.
comes together. So I think
That
that
makes sense.
insight, you can really go deep with it, but you're right to bring
Yeah.
it closer. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was just going to say to
Yeah.
close that part, just to bring it closer to
Yeah.
the yes and yes.
Yeah. Yeah. The yes and yes. It's that's the good thing about like insights like those.
Mm-hmm.
They usually it's not one thing, it's usually a cluster of things, right? And it's usually a cluster. Like I always say, and when I say always say, I'm not saying I always say, you know, those people that always say, no, I always say this.
Right.
Like a lot of things are like distribution as opposed to prediction or options. You usually have like a group of options, and there's a probability. There's a set of probabilities that you will decide to choose one or the other, right? And it's similar to the yes. The last thing I'm going to touch on this yes and yes point, but as it relates to what you just said earlier, is the yes and the more no you're saying. I agree, but I was thinking more that you're talking to yourself. So that one is when you're talking to someone else, and you could point out like, if I'm going to do this, there's 4 other things that I could have I'm going to have to put aside, right? And maybe they will appreciate if you were to say no. But what I'm talking about is like the what you're saying to yourself subconsciously that is happening, but you're not present. Because the moment you kind of bring things from the subconscious and bring it in present, I think it has a lot more power. So if you kind of acknowledge that when you say yes, yeah, I will go to that party, right?
Mm-hmm.
That piece of design that you need to work on tonight, that's what you're saying no to. So now you have to make up for that. And once you kind of understand that, either you will cut the party short or you're going to make adjustment for that. So what I was thinking about is more of like a self-talk, like you're talking to yourself and recognizing what your decision, the impact of your decision, as it relates to you. But what you've brought out that I wasn't seeing is the other part. So one is like personal and the other part is like social.
Right.
And the impact, and obviously they work together. So I didn't think about that part.
And that's it. But this is the Generation Gap, Bridging the Gap podcast. So we kind of get a feel for my thoughts towards the yes and yes. Obviously, you kind of summarized your thoughts and kind of where we are with that. I do want to bring up the generational angles, right? So speaking for the more youthful generation, the elder generations. And so let's kind of bring in some perspective. So I do have some things here that I think would represent those parties, and maybe us speaking on that would kind of help bridge some of these gaps, right? So here's the generational angle that came about for this one here, which is they actually took it a completely different way with this for what I have. It says for the generational trigger, the trigger that would exist between our generations on something like this is that for many, especially from the older generations, this feels impossible.
But 1 second. So I want to make sure that, because generation is such a big word, right? And it kind of it's very expansive because it can run from 1 to, from 12-year-old to 80-year-old, and people are living 100. Are you talking about your generation, Kayla's 20-something, 30? What generation?
So I would say from millennials and so Gen Z, millennials and below, if you want to say that. So you're looking at 35 under.
Yeah. Okay.
I think that's kind of a fair thing to at least a benchmark. So the trigger that would exist then, to use that 35 and under, which 35 over, it says I have here, for many, especially the older generations, this feels impossible. So the idea of yes and yes, raised in environments where choices were finite and paths had to be picked. The idea that both is an option can sound unrealistic, indulgent, and even dangerous. So I'll speak first to the trigger on a generational side, right? Where so on the generational side, I'll say that my generation, and I'll just pull it over here for a second. The younger generation has to do more. And this is part of the frustration that exists, for example. When it comes to growing up, the idea that I'll take The Simpsons. The Simpsons was a show on TV, still on a show. I think
You're
still
twice. Sorry, I think you're twice. I'm seeing your.
Yes, yeah, you should. Okay, so your cameras, you're good.
Yeah, I'm back.
Yeah. So yeah,
Sorry about that.
this is part of the process. This is why it's episode 2.
Yeah.
You know, you figure things out. So I'm not really worried about any of this stuff. As I told you, Dad, and I'll say it on the podcast here, it's a father-son podcast. There is no losing from that. The fact that we're here and being able to talk about these things and put these things together, that's already a win. So we'll figure out the rest of the stuff on the fly. But as far as so where were we? Generation gap triggers. The younger generation, the idea of yes and yes. The older generation feels like that's too much. That's not realistic, or like you cannot do that. Here's the part where I'll empathize with the other side in this part. I'll empathize with the fact that we grew up in the technological age, right? The dawn of the internet, as far as from a household experience. Yeah, from a household or application experience. Prior to that, things were very finite. For example, you can graduate your high school and move 2 hours away in the 80s and never see anybody ever again. For all intents and purposes, you moving 2 hours away to a small town beside where you were is effectively the same thing as you moving to China or across the world. The communication was just as limited, right? The decisiveness was there. When you were gone, right? Obviously, you could road trip, but you're not seeing them. It's a postcard, maybe, if it gets there, right? And it's a picture at most. There's no FaceTime. So you had to really think about your decisions. But at the same time, here's where I resonate with this yes and yes. In this generation, you cannot just do, for example, one job and think that you're going to be okay. Those days are gone. And I want to bring up the point of The Simpsons. Yeah. When we look at TV, we have to remember, and for generations younger than I am at this point, the Gen Zs and so forth, there was something called prime time slots on TV. So that was when you finished school, there was like the 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock prime time where everybody's able to watch the American Idol slots, things like that.
Oh yeah, that's true. That's so true. I remember it.
Yeah. So the main slots that were taken in those eras were shows that had to appeal to a large demographic. That was the only way for it to be popular enough in order to maintain those slots. The Simpsons was one of those shows that has been able to maintain a prime time slot or been on TV for such a long time. And why? Is because it appealed to the masses. That's what it was supposed to do. And it's a show about a guy, Homer Simpson, who works a regular factory job, right?
Yeah.
Remedial job, as far as in the intro, he's fumbling the nuclear thing. Like, he's not proficient at all. Go home, was able to have a house, a 3-bedroom house with a car, go on vacation, a dog, a cat, and he's basically doing the same thing. So in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you could potentially put a bolt on a car, and that's your job. In 40 years, have
you just
have a
been
house,
doing that,
a car, vacation, this. We cannot do that. The idea that you can just do a summer job, I heard someone tell me about cutting down trees with their summer job, and that paid for the year. We cannot even operate like that. So we have to have a side hustle, have a main hustle, have something else you're trying to do, have this, that. So it's always going to be yes and yes from a framework of, if we want to attain anything in life, that's kind of the perspective that I feel like my generation is like, we only know to live like this. And so, I think that's kind of the perspective.
Yeah, well,
as far as the triggers.
That's very good. Yeah. I remember seeing Kayla's speech when she went back to your former school at Stansted.
For those, who's Kayla?
Kayla's my youngest daughter.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to bring Kayla and Shante and Chad. Right. You have to bring all of them on the show one of these days to get their perspective and things too. But she was talking about that very thing where she was saying this idea that you can't do two things at once, right? or you can't do two things well. It's just not true, especially even universities these days, school, because you know me and university. I'm pro education, but somewhat anti-establishment in certain respect. I think obviously they have value in certain areas, but I think they're like pimping the brains of the young people. But she was saying something similar, that they shouldn't just do one thing. And I noticed that some of the universities, or maybe at this point, maybe pretty much all of them, they start having what's called cross-functional degrees. Like you yourself got not just business, but business with communication,
philosophy and
systems, right? Yeah. So
yeah.
they kind of start combining these things. And I would even add to your point that when a person is very good at one thing, that's not possible that a person can be good at one thing. Usually you're good at many things and you kind of target them to one thing. Right.
Wait,
so I will challenge any. Yeah.
So I know, trust me, I know where you're coming from. We see a lot of the things the same, but from a generational standpoint, I think that's kind of where, the younger generations and my generation, like, what would you say in defense or to bring up their points? Because they're not here right now in this discussion. So their perspective is, I would think, like, for example, they had to do what they had to do. They didn't have the internet, right? When they moved, there was a decisiveness that I think the older generation has, because you had to have it. There was like for example, I'll give you another example, the library. You don't have what we have, the luxury to have a school assignment and wait till the last 2 days in order to actually get something done. If you didn't go to the library, figure out what you want, go to the library and get that book, guess what? You got a new subject. You're going to have a new topic because you don't have your source to do any of that stuff. You hope that they're able to return it when they say that they're supposed to return it to the library, right? Like, so there was a clarity I think the world forced you to have, even as far as apps, right? Like we have Scotia Bank and TD and all the bank apps on our phone. I remember just being young, having to stop by, with you and mom, have to go by the bank and wait for you guys to go in. And if there's a line, right? For an hour, to do a transfer, to do anything. There's no taking picture of so you have to really time out your day and your week and your life. So there's a focus there where you had to choose daily. You couldn't do everything, but
well, that's why it shouldn't be a comparison. Not every time you can compare one to the other, because if the context is so different, just by comparing them, you can't, like, so again, you're comparing groups of things. So most things are not just a single thing. It's usually a set of things that comes together. So when we're doing like the comparison, like they could focus on just one thing, we have to also take in consideration all of what you just said, the context, right? The context is that if you're not good at one thing, you're not going to be promoted. You're just not, because the education system, even up to when you were a kid, which is not that's not very long, most things were so specialized that if you're not really good at one thing, nobody is going to employ you, right? So we have to really, when we're trying to analyze these things, I think we have to kind of step back and see and ask a few questions, like, is it even possible to do a fair assessment? Having said that, the challenge is when people my age and older that take our context from the 80s and 90s and then kind of bring it forward and then try to impose that and superimpose that onto our children, when the context is rapidly changing and has changed dramatically, exponential change in the last couple of years. I'll give you an example. I know somebody who
I'll
was
give you the last the wrap up on this. You get to put the bow on this segment.
Okay, so I don't know about no bow. I'm not putting any bow on anything. Okay, so that's okay. Okay, let me wrap it up. Okay, so I know a person who has a son, and he got a job. Right, he finished his university, went back to college, studied computer science at the college. I can't remember his degree, and then he got a job for the government. And the first day, and the job was like more or less service based, right? You look up, respond to the customer and things like that. And then when he got to work for the first week, they said, okay, you know that your responsibility is not going to only be this, but you have to learn WordPress and manage our WordPress server. And by the way, you have to manage this other thing, and so on, right? So imagine if an older person was telling him, only learn one thing. Look at the problem that it would be in. So that's the challenge for older people my age, is to, even though we know when back then it made perfect sense to do what we're doing, because that was the environment and the context that we're in. The challenge is to make sure that we're not bringing that forward and pretending like nothing has changed, because everything has. That's it.
That's the
I
metaphorical
wrap up.
boat.
Yeah,
I'll go
exactly.
with that. So that,
funny,
guys,
that's funny.
that would be the.
Do I prioritize?
Oh, let's bring that back. Yeah, so that would be the legacy and lessons first segment there. This episode here, we're not even going to focus too much on the timing. Eventually, those things will come, right?
Yeah, we'll get it tight.
Yeah, we'll get the timing. We'll get kind of more. But just to have you understand that we want to have the conversations. These are conversations my dad and I have all the time, right? And so we're just putting it in a podcast format, and we realize a lot of the stuff is on many different topics, many different subjects, many different ways to add value. I would also say that I had a point there. What was the point? You know where I was going with
You're asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking. Anyways, I don't know. So that was the first segment. I'll remember it. If it's important, I'll remember it.
If it's important to come back. Yeah, exactly.
Moving on to our second affinity stone, value and ventures. Won't go into all of it now, but we do have an info card. The info card will give you some context as to what's going on there. And again, you saw the Generation Gap podcast info cards from earlier, so hopefully things will start to make a bit more sense. So we'll jump into it. So the second topic, Dad, for this one is, let me see.
Yo, there's more.
Yeah. What's the point? Yeah. So what's the point of purpose if the system eats it anyways? Okay. And the affirmative statement, or a way to go about it, is saying, build it so that they can steal it. So this is kind of the build it so that they can steal it. Value and ventures, this is the topic around that for this. The context summary, so I'll give you a bit more. They say imitation is the highest form of flattery, but what happens when institutions don't just imitate, they absorb? One day you're mentoring kids with your own model. The next day the school district rolls it out without your name on it. In the mission-driven world, is doing good enough, or do you have to defend your good to keep it yours? That tension between service and survival might be the real generational divide. Okay, so we'll take a look.
Okay, what I do.
At this YouTube short that inspired this conversation today. So I'll go ahead and play that for you guys.
I go into the high schools and I teach kids entrepreneurship skills.
Yeah, that's not a business.
What? Says who?
Yeah, says me.
Why?
Because it's not scalable.
Why do you say that?
What? That it's not scalable?
Exactly.
Because you're the business. And even if you developed a system of teaching entrepreneurship, your rate of growth is always going to be limited to the size of the market you're operating in. As if what you're teaching actually does work, the schools are going to do it themselves. It's actually a good lesson for all of us to learn. If you sell into someone else's population, unless you control fully the value proposition and the intellectual property, that person is going to sooner or later figure out what you're doing and they're going to do it themselves. And you would if you were the school. If I'm a school and I can collect extra lesson fees for teaching what you're teaching, I'm going to do it.
Do.
Okay.
There you go. So
Right.
yeah, so I'll
Okay.
just give. So I'll just say that.
I'm hearing this for the first time, right? Like, so this is new.
Yeah.
That's-
So
that's
this
pretty
is
cool.
it, Dad. This is what I look at that, and this is why it's a source.
What is your one second? What is your take on that? Because okay,
I'll tell you
'cause
what my take is. It's a
it's
source.
not
spot
clear.
for me.
It's not clear.
Yeah,
What
it's clear to
that
me.
was.
It's clear to me.
Okay, so
Yeah, it's way.
paraphrase it because I think maybe because it's the first time I'm hearing it. But
Okay.
go. What
So-
what is he saying there?
So essentially what he's saying is, obviously this is
Yeah.
somebody that I follow. Do I remember his name exactly? No. But I do subscribe to him. I do watch a lot of
I
his
know
stuff,
him.
and he goes around and
So
helps.
South African guy.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah, he's good. He's really good.
Yeah.
Very
And
good.
so he goes around, helps a lot of people with business related things, and honestly a lot of different stuff. And obviously in this conversation, she believes she's here at this seminar or conference or what have you, clearly to ask about clearly feeling really good about her business that she has, right? And this is something that is talked about in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, understanding the different types of ways to make money or have. And a lot of times people confuse self-employment with a business. And I think this is
Yep.
kind of falling into that category here where
Oh, okay.
is it built with scale? I'll say this. This is the main point I really want to get to because I might forget it. When I watch this video, the insight that I get from this and what pops up
Yeah.
in my head is for all the corporate jobs that I've working in universities as well, this is something, the idea of creating and innovating and wanting to help, I think that was good enough in the past to just focus on that and you would be promoted. Where I think now you do have to have this sort of dual intent of creating and innovating and providing value, but also sort of finding a way to protect what it is that you're doing. Because what she's saying here, I've been on the school side where she's going into schools teaching entrepreneurship. I've come up with programs and systems and then seen the school use it and seen institutions use it and the places I work use it and then not either attribute the value back in a promotional sense, in a credit sense. But again, this is what he's saying. You would do the same thing too. And in fairness, looking at it, I can see that being true. I think there's a way to do business, and I'll close it here for my opening remarks. I think there's a way to do business where it's a win-win-win. Win for the customers, win for you as a business, win for whomever that third party is, if it's somebody working for you. And I think going about it that way is important. But I do understand that perspective. So again, I will just remind you what the topic is for this one. Build it so that they can steal it. What's the point of purpose if the system eats it anyways? If the system is going to take it anyways? What's the point of doing this if they're going to just take it anyways? So I'd ask you, Dad, opening question, okay? Was there ever a time you gave something away for free and later realized it had real market value?
Every day, like that question, yeah, because I used to just give away business models. I give away a lot of stuff for free, but I also I'm aware that it has market value, and I've seen some of my ideas turn into businesses for other people. People even get awards and things like that because I usually give away the business model. So the question, another question maybe I should be asking myself is why? Why am I doing that? Well, I remember when I started learning about business models and all that, different frameworks and things like that. One of the best way for me to get really good at anything is to do it or to help somebody else do it from scratch and go all the way to market or even if it doesn't mature into self-sustaining business, but it's actually can go to market because that's the way I learn. So there's quite a few times. I'm sure you know of a lot of them. So, but if I may, and I may just you can. That's I said, yeah. Okay. So, but I want to touch. So that's my answer. So maybe I should ask you if there's any more before, because I really want to say something a little bit more on what you were saying, and I want to make sure I don't sound like I'm challenging some of these ideas, because I agree with them, but I think it's from my engineering. I usually ask a lot of different questions, because I agree with him that we should try to protect our intellectual property, but I think intellectual property is so difficult and expensive to defend. I don't even know if that's always the correct answer. I think once you have a good idea, I think in your look at your generation. If you can first mover, and these days, not first mover advantage, but it's a little bit more than first mover advantage. Not because you're the first mean that you're going to take over, but if you're the first to gain traction and the first to gain virality, right, and they're known and have a really good story, in a lot of cases, that's more defensible than intellectual property, because intellectual property is very difficult and expensive to defend. So music, I understand because it's easier, but there's other things where just to have the intellectual property in some of the ideas, it's very, very expensive. But I think blockchain, I don't know if the court system is up to date yet, but I think it's going to have your intellectual property, which is defensible. It's going to be a lot easier. I know you and I were talking about that a long time ago, where we even bought a lot of the blockchain domain names and stuff like that, where people could upload their ideas on the blockchain, and because of the time stamp and the immutability of the blockchain, that might be one of the easiest and cheapest way to create foolproof intellectual property. But I don't know if the courts, if it's up to the court.
So I'd follow up with this then. So how do you know? So in this scenario, for example, how do you know when to serve the system or to build your own? Like that's kind of the thing where she's clearly, he's talking about selling into another population. At what point, or what kind of signs or keys could you say, it's time for you to start building your own infrastructure? Or does it make sense for her? And you said, there's other factors. So for her, maybe it is the love of being able to help students and see their spark in their eyes, where if you go private, for example, and build your own thing, now all of a sudden, who's able to attain your resources? Who's fitting the bill? When you go into the school system, right, they have a certain budget that budget is probably subsidized by the government or that city or town to have certain programs or after school programs. So the school is fitting that bill. All of a sudden, you talk about your business model. You change that, and let's just say she wants to grow this business. She has to make it a private thing. Or let's just say she has to go outside. All of a sudden, now you're looking at parents that have certain disposable income for their kids, and all of a sudden, you're no longer helping the low income. You know what I mean?
Yes and yes.
Right? And that's
yes and yes.
Yeah, you could go with
no,
that.
I think there's a delay in my thing. No, I cut you off. But I'm saying yes and yes. I don't think I agree with his premise, right? When he said it's not a business. Again, there's a difference between, as you alluded earlier, between self-employment, a regular business, and a startup. Right, a startup. So not all business are startups. What do I mean by that? Startups, by definition, they're doing something old in a new way, or they're going for a completely new market. Or sometimes they because of their offer, they actually create a new market. So they don't create the new jobs. Like that need was already there, but they find a new way to go after that market. The offer is different. So I don't think when he said that's not a business, I think a better way I would, if I were to say that, I would say it's a lifestyle business that's not defensible, right? Unless you actually find a way to start certain way of teaching, certain, right, and then you start get those information out, and then you kind of your SOP, your standard operating procedure on your business model in such a way that it's hard for them to just copy it. And I disagree with him, and he's a very smart guy, right? I like him, like I learned a lot from him, but I think there's not everything you can copy. So let's say, I think one of the things you can't copy is your story. Why is she teaching this thing? You understand? Like, what was the reason for her to start teaching this? Okay, let me give you an example. She had a great job and they kick her out of the job for whatever reason. She was homeless, right? And then she start to found a book, and then an entrepreneur book, and then she start teaching. You understand? That is very difficult to copy, because we're talking about business now. It's almost like no business cannot operate without a story. And if your story is very authentic, that's a very defensible business, right? So when he said it's not a business, I think he means it's not a startup or it's not a scalable business. I think he mentioned scalable. But there's a lot of business that weren't scalable last week because of agents and AI agents, right? Because I'm in that field. I'm on the cutting edge of that. That is also all of a sudden that could become a very scalable business because of the change in technology and so on. That's my point. I'm done.
That's a good point. So would you say that in going about it the way that he's saying, do you think protecting your idea means you trust going into starting a business with the idea of protecting your idea? Does that feel like you're trusting people less? Does that go against the mindset of that is needed, the abundance, growth mindset, as they claim?
I will tell you the other thing that I think is not like what I think he could say that a little bit better.
And again, just
when you started
for context sake for him, we're talking about a 1 minute slice of a video. We're just going off. We're not going.
I know.
We're just going off of what we've seen in that 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what I'm doing. But what I'm saying is the question I'm answering is the one where you said, okay, tell me if I'm wrong. Like, people should not are people trusting less, so therefore they should get intellectual property if they're doing a business. That's kind of the idea.
Yeah. The idea is that if you're needing to protect your business, if you're starting something, and you need to protect it, and you're thinking about protecting it as much as possible. Does that mean you trust people less? Does that tie to scarcity? Like, I'll say it like this: is that a viable mindset to have?
Okay, good. Yeah,
is it the right mindset to have?
I don't know if I don't know if I can answer it like with just 2 sentences, because
yes and yes.
I have to no, yes and yes and yes and no. Yeah. No, I have to go elaborate a little bit more, because when you go into a business, usually you're taking a while to find out what the problem that the person has. So any type of, and it can take you sometimes years to actually find out what are those set of problems that the customer has, and what are the set of solution that you have that matches exactly those problem. So you have a set of problem and you have a set of solution at a correct price, the way the person wants to do it, and so on, right? So sometimes, so initially when you're starting a business, even years, you don't want to go patent anything yet, because you don't even know what the business model is yet. You're still learning what the business model is. Yeah, the business model is.
Is there a difference?
Yeah, there's a big difference. So the business plan is an execution tool. So, for example, I'll tell you what the best business plan is. You're in a business, like we're doing this podcast, and we we're doing a great job, and people know exactly what our personality is, and people want to don't mind brand with us, right? Co-brand or something like that. They know exactly, and we also studied it for a couple of months or years or whatever, and then we said, okay,
Hold that.
we have a
thought.
business.
See the thing on your display?
Yeah, but it's too small. I can't. I'm not going to be able to see it.
Okay.
Read it. Tell me what it's saying.
I can't see everything that it says, but it is.
Oh, it's coming from me?
Yeah. That's on your display. I think
Really?
it's your camera. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, 1 second. Sorry.
No. As I was saying, guys, we're gonna post this regardless. Like, we're not even gonna chop it up. I think it's good to show,
Yeah, that was me. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Sorry about that again. All right.
back.
All right. So the question though, let me finish that
Yeah.
piece where I'm saying So I don't think it's a bad thing if you already know what your business is, right? And the question that you asked, the follow-up question that you asked is whether the business model is the same as a business plan. Well, the business plan is an execution tool. When you know your customer, you know what I mean? Like it's a plan, so you can do everything. You have the resources to do everything that you're outlining. So it's a plan, right? It's deterministic. So you know, for example, if Walmart has a plan to go build a Walmart in Jamaica, they have the money, they have the data, they have the skill set and all that stuff. They can have a business plan. Now, a business model is a learning tool. You don't know what you kind of come up with an hypothesis. It's like an hypothesis that here's a problem that you think people are willing to pay for, and you have a set of solution that you think will match those problems. Right. And you think you can do it at a cost, right? That's less than the revenue that it can generate. In other words, you can make a profit, right? And now you start iterating. You start saying, is this what you want? And the customer said, not really. But so you wouldn't want to go patent that. You want to patent when you have a repeatable business model where most of the stuff that you're offering is kind of what the customer want the solution for the customer, and they have the money to pay for it, and you can do it at a cost where it's profitable for you. That's the business model. So one is a learning tool, the other one is a implementation tool. Mm-hmm. Right? That's why one is called a plan and one is called a model. So the plan kind of suggests deterministic behavior where you can do it, and there's a series of steps that you can follow. Where the business model, you're just learning and there's no rule. You're just kind of asking questions, getting data, analyzing it, doing stuff, action, and so on and so on. That's why it's a model. It's more malleable,
right,
as opposed to deterministic.
Okay.
So that's how it works.
Correct.
This was a test.
Look, so I think we kind of get a good sense there. Again, just kind of bringing it back home with this one, the idea, the stealing, right? When you're starting a venture, right? Do we have to protect it in today's day and age, right? And I think what I've gathered from this conversation so far is that, yes, there's a way to do that, but that's not the only context. And it is a business, perhaps not a scalable one, but that's also something that you can learn to do. But as far as that short that we watched, it gave the impression that she was defenseless, that it's entirely up to whatever the school wants to do. But a part of this, and this is what we got in this conversation, is a part of the business is your why, right? And how much of that is you. And I think that resonates with me, and it resonates for what I know as well. For example, Microsoft takes a lot of when you look at Microsoft stuff, it takes on the personality of the founder, right? A lot of these businesses take on the personality of the founder that's built throughout, and that resonates even when they leave. If they come back, Steve Jobs, right? You can see a lot of that remains there, especially if they were able to either articulate their why and or act on their why. And I think
Yep.
that part, and I think this is where today people are willing to, and Simon Sinek has the book Start With Why, and he says people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. So I think there's a lot
Right.
of power in being able to articulate your why. And I think not just articulating it, it can be built in. And actually, to use the business model canvas and the business plan, I think you should start by creating your business model canvas. So using that as an exercise, do understand your why. Ask yourself the 5 whys or go through, and we can talk about that in the foundations and framework. That's what our 4th segment is for, speaking on frameworks more directly. But I think the main thing here is that I think it's a good video. I think it's a good insight that he had. I think it's definitely going to help her understand,
Yep.
okay, you know what? Maybe there's a bit more I can do, perhaps even protecting my stuff, or even as far as your offering, letting her think a little bit more. But I think with this insight that you're saying, she does have something, right? When I watched that video and I looked at her, she seems like somebody that's very proud to have helped. I help kids' entrepreneurship skills. And we're talking about a day and age where, for example, a lot of teachers, speaking as an academic advisor, as someone who worked as one at a university, high school teachers, a lot of them are just doing it because that's the job that they can have, and it provides a lot of security. A lot of them, and there's obviously good teachers, don't do it for the love of the game, or love of the game in this context is to better the children and help them and be the futures of the nation and so forth. And so to have people that want to come in from the outside, I'm really happy about that, to be able to teach them skills that are valid. And you can see, I'll even give her another bit of credit. She is willing to go out and seek education. And this is, I think, brings it back to your point. Seek education in this video, because she's at these seminars learning about it, really wanting to do better, to bring that back to the kids, right? Where I think that you always mention education has to serve a purpose. Education has to be lifelong. That's how I describe the education that you're focused. You mentioned about, for example, the education system and how that plays, but you've never questioned the value of knowledge and the value of education and learning lifelong. That was always far exceeding than anything else. So I think it was a good video. I think it was a good
I think so
conversation
too.
and insight.
Yeah, I think so. I'll say the last few words. He's doing something great. He's pushing entrepreneurism in Africa, which is the growth area of the next century.
Okay, what I do. Okay, what I do.
So, actually, he's telling her the truth about if you are your business. Oh, wait. I wanted to say something. I just didn't want to interrupt you when you're talking about the why. Sometimes we have to be careful when we're using the why when we're doing a business. So unless our why is is aligned with helping people and solving problems, right? For example, so let's say my why is I don't take disrespect from people. And then I come up with a why I don't do that. In a business I think is so impersonal. I think it's the most impersonal thing there is. It's so impersonal that it's not about you the moment you said you're going to start a business. You really have to start looking from the side, through the eyes of the customer. What are their why? You understand? So if your why is about looking about what their why is, then I think the why thing will work perfectly. But in most cases, you have to put away your why if you're in business and start thinking about what is that person that you're trying to serve is trying to do. What are some of their struggle? How can you help them make progress? So I think the why is very important, but I think the weight of the why has to be shifted from your why towards the why of the customer. But what you and I are doing right now, because it's so personal for us, it's about our why. Why are we doing it? That's different from if we were to just get a business, then all of a sudden we have to make sure that there's some kind of alignment with our core belief system.
Right.
on the business that we're offering. We have to look at that first.
So that's
because
something we can definitely dive into more, because what we're talking about, what made it defensible is her why. Like, she's part of the business that is, you know. Anyways, we can definitely go into that.
No, go wait, go. No, finish. This is important because I think you're onto something.
I think
Go,
that
try to finish your thought.
yeah, I think that the why in a business, right? Why you're doing what you're doing is important, and I think people could see that. And I think for her, again, there's a lot of people that I do a lot of after school programs that don't care about it and they're in it for the money. I look at her in 1 minute, not having seen her in any other video or knowing her at all personally or any other capacity. Don't follow her on social, and I see that she's somebody that cares. That's the impression that I get. So just off of that alone, I would like to support her stuff in any ways that I can. If it's through disposable income, if it was through a referral, that's not something I'm doing. That's part of her business, and part of the reason she's been able to, I would assume, get into the schools and doing what she's doing is because other people share in the decision-making roles in those universities, or being able to see that. So isn't that part of your marketing, right? In some sense, but you're not accounting for it, but you're expressing it. And so
I think one second, I have to cut you there because you touched on some very important point. I think that's that is that gap. If we're in generation gap, so let's talk about gaps. That gap could be social entrepreneurism. The difference between pure capitalistic, just I need to capture as much value as possible and all that. Then social entrepreneurism like Khan Academy. I'm sure that Sal is okay and never have to work again, even though it was a hedge fund and trader investor before. But I think if you push the why a lot, like I used to do a lot of mentorship for free. People like think, why would you give all this information for free? But that is the very thing that turns me into some kind of expert in a whole bunch of different areas, right? So I think it can coalesce. So I agree with you. The why from her perspective, if she changed her business model a little bit, all of a sudden, like a quasi, not business just model, business, right? Right, like where
of the business model,
you know those.
Canvas?
Yeah, just change our business model. Like so, you know the business model canvas usually have 9 blocks, where you have different types of business model canvas. Mm-hmm. But the one that we have in mind of the 9 blocks and all that stuff. So the people that she or market segment could also be for not for profit. And she still can make a lot of money because not for profit and all that. So the business model could change, and all of a sudden it's still a scalable business. Khan Academy is the biggest school on the planet, right? And it's just doing good things. Yet it attracts millions and millions of dollars, right? So there's other ways to do it. We can get into that in some other episode. We'll come back on this.
You guys can let us know which topics, of course, which to get into.
Yeah.
So wrapping that one, I think we did good. Moving on to the third segment, that is the health and harmony. As always, we start off with the info card. For those of you guys that are new, pause the video. You'll get to see, get some more context as to what specifically this is pertaining to. Now, the topic for this one. All right, Dad. The topic for this one.
I'm ready.
Is, okay, did our ancestors know a sleep secret we've ignored? North is a direction. Maybe it's also a prescription. So that's kind of the thing, right? So the intro hook. They say your body is 70% water, but what if it's also 100% magnetic? This short clip suggests something radical. Your nerve cells align with the Earth's magnetic field. Radical, I mean, I grew up knowing some of this stuff, but I think it's still good for us to, talk about it. So let's check it out.
Sleep with your head north. You can add more time. If you breathe.
How do you sleep with your head north?
You find out what north is in the room.
What if my bed is this way? Which way is north?
Then you change. You
this
find
way?
out. I don't know. But I'm saying, here's what you do. I take a compass on the road with me, and when I go to a hotel, I find out north. You take a baby and put a baby in the crib, the baby will seek out north. We keep straightening the baby up. The baby don't turn all the way around the crib, it finds north. Once you lay down like this, every nerve cell in your body is pulled due north. So if you're sleeping north, there's no pull. Just like it pulls a compass, it pulls every nerve cell in your body. Sleep with your head north. You can add more time. If you breathe, sleep with your head.
So, sleep with your head north, right? I think this always made sense to me, and it reminds me of something that you were talking about before, and that's why I selected this video, this short. If you had to be I think it was knowledgeable or have wisdom,
Or
remember?
intelligence.
Knowledge and
Intelligence and knowledge, yeah.
Right? And the knowledge part.
Yeah.
It's better to have knowledge, right? And
Yeah.
the reason I say that, and it reminds me of this conversation, is because I remember in high school, one of the things that I thought about is when I first learned that the moon impacts the water in the ocean, and that causes the ins and outs, the waves, right?
Yeah.
High
flows.
tide, low tide,
Exactly.
tsunamis. All of this stuff is factoring the move and where that is, the moon. Sorry. And the reason I thought that was interesting because when we talk about astronomy and all these other stuff, there's real basis for it. And this is where the knowledge part, and I'll tie it back to this. If the moon is that far away, this is what I thought back then. And you have this body of water called the ocean, and it's able to impact that. And we are supposedly 70% water. What is the moon doing to us? If it's able to move that, what effect is that placing on us, right? And so when I see this talking about the pull, I think these are things that are affecting us. And I think it's important as far as our health. How many things like this do we not see? But we all know that a baby, for example, will move its body, right? And you put the baby down this way, and then you go back to the crib, the baby's turned somewhere else. But all of a sudden now we're understanding that there's a magnetic pull. You have a compass, same thing. It's always due north, unless interfered with, on some other stuff. So the insight that I get from this is that there's a lot of traditional wisdom that we have, especially that we've forgotten about, that has gone missing. And I think that's somewhat ironic considering that we have the internet, we have access to all the information, and then we have ChatGPT now, yet some of the traditional knowledge, the things that were passed down, have been lost. And these are the things now that we're almost rediscovering. So these are some of the thoughts that are going through my mind. So I'll ask you that, the first question. Have you ever noticed a difference in sleep depending on where your bed faces? Probably not,
Yeah.
I would think.
No.
Really
This guy, yesterday I was saying to Paula, like, that's where I got it from. It's turn north stuff where you can sleep better. But so I read it or watched it somewhere on the internet or in some book during my lifetime that if you turn to the north while you're sleeping, you will sleep in a more restful way. So I start doing that. So the answer is yes, as far as I know. But I don't know is because what if it's because I heard this and then I turned north, right? Then that also let me sleep because I think, I don't know, but I think it actually work. So I still try to do that as much as possible because sometimes I can't remember and just lie down and then you're asleep and still sleep, right? Sometimes it depends. But I think there's some truth to that. And you also alluded or you just mentioned in passing that information given the internet, and now we have generative AI like LLMs and stuff like that, that information should be easily accessible. I think those informations are in a lot of cases, it's very sparse. It's inside cultures. It's inside the elders' heads. And stories, and like, for example, my great-grandmother, you didn't get to meet. Yeah, you met your great-grandmother, right? Yes, you met your but you didn't meet your great. Anyway, my great-grandmother, she would just get different leaves, and no matter what sickness you have, she would just give it to you. and that fever and all that stuff is going to disappear. You know what I mean? Like, it's going to work. Like, and that's coming from her great grandmother. So all of a sudden you're like 200 years away. So I think information like that, because of the pharmaceutical companies and all that stuff, and the hyper capitalism
Do you think it was
in a
an accident? It was just
right? Area of the world with big pharma and all that stuff, that those information is going to be tabooed. So even if it works, people are going to say, that doesn't work. It's, you know, like, it's crazy. Why you doing? Go to the doctor and all that. I really think there's a lot of information that's going to come back. I think that's even a business opportunity to go and ask old people in every culture you can, like, what would your grandmother say if you have cold? What would your grandmother tell your grandmother? So in a very short time, you're like 200 years back.
And
right?
what you're actually seeing this on social, where there's a huge move to a more traditional way of living as far as food, health. People are understanding that the red D40, like all these dyes and things that are in your food, people are really moving away from all of that stuff and understanding how intense the prices are like how drastic the prices have increased, right? This has a shift. And I think of it in similarly, and I'm actually happy about that, by the way, because these prices are ridiculous.
I think your audio is cutting out ever so keep talking again. Repeat what you just said.
Yeah.
So I will tell you if you repeat it. If you
Yeah. So I'll say that there's a huge shift. So we're talking about, you know, the traditional ways of things 200 years back, been passed down for generations, and somewhat recently, the relative now, the last 100 years or so, all of a sudden that traditional wisdom that has always been passed down continuously has now been fragmented, and we don't have all that information now. But I feel like on social, there's a lot of trends to go back and rediscover and start living in more of those traditional ways. And so, what was the example that I was going to bring up there? Anyway, I just see from food, people are storing their food, storing it in the correct way. I mentioned the red D40, so like Doritos or a lot of the red dyes that they're doing now, people are moving away from them. They're becoming a lot more aware. They're having the artificial meats now. I don't know if you saw that they approved that.
yeah. I've
Today,
seen
right?
some of
So,
that.
you know, this is using technology in a different way, and people
Yep.
now are starting to move back. Oh yeah, that's what I was saying. It reminded me of the intranet, right? The idea of the shared economy. And I think
Yep.
what had happened was with a lot of these, you know, these institutions, Ivy League, for example, one of the attractions, one of the main reasons to have gone there is because of the access to resources that they had, both in their form of their library, but also as far as equipment that they had in those places. You were not able to get those. They weren't readily available in other places. And so that sort of hoarding of, how do I say, of knowledge and opportunity, really, in that sense, people rejected that. And so you had this whole counter wave that occurred, that you started to see the internet form. People were willing to work on that and share, and things that would cost a lot of money, that starts to open it up.
Yep.
Right? Then you have open source come out, right? You had, what was it? Wikipedia. I don't want to say Wikipedia, but you get the idea.
The entire internet, it's amazing that the movement of the internet, the HTTP protocol, the www, the
World Wide
the
Web.
www protocol, not the HTTP. That's something different. But even the linking of different pages and all that stuff, the www part of the URL, that was given up for free. A lot of the internet, and I think the same type of open source, decentralized sharing of information is here again, right? It's only going to get more and more expansive all over Africa and places like that, right? Because of the very soon, just to keep it in the health, that information is going to be shared much easier. But there's challenges to that, because the food or food supply right now, because of the pesticides and GMO seeds and things like that, right? The changing of the actual DNA of the plants. So the rest of the plant after that one, doesn't matter how clean you want to, stay
Yeah,
away from
that's
pesticides
no,
and
that's
all that
true.
stuff. It's
I
in
heard
the
that for
DNA.
like apples and other fruits that you buy in the grocery store. Now, if you were to take the seeds and try to grow them, they can't grow.
No, if it and no, sometimes it not only can't grow, but it will start killing other stuff, other
Yeah,
plants,
that's too much
right? You
information.
know what I mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
So some places in um, Africa and even India, they're kind of pushing back on some of that
Hmm.
because sovereignty of food sovereignty, right? Because if a few companies own the seeds and the seeds can't grow, and you have to pay intellectual property, and the farmers can't afford the seeds, then what you will find is that small amount of
You get that
huge food
not
companies,
monopoly, but the
yeah, monopolies, duopolies,
yeah.
collusion for your food, for the world's food. So there's going to be pushback on that because I don't want to get too political, but
Mhm.
the world is splitting it into two camps, where you're going to have the Western camps, like America and Europe, West North America, Japan on one side, Australia, New Zealand, right, on one side, North South Korea, and then you're going to have the global South, which is everybody else. So you're going to find that there's going to be a split economic, geopolitical affairs, and that's going to trickle down into health, right?
Right.
Because that's part of the whole thing. So again, you're going to start see a big movement of that. Because last thing on this topic, the how the West, how we remember we're from the West, so we can say how we in some sense is doing this is through like World Trade Organization, World Bank, IMF, right? So if you don't take our seeds and if you don't take these food that has pesticides and stuff like that in it, then we're not going to get any loan.
Hmm.
We're not going to give you any loans. Oh, and by the way, you're not going to have any visa, so you can't travel. So then you will see some very quick decision being made to let things in.
And so
So
here's and
yeah,
that I think hearing all that information, and I'll kind of bring up the generational part in a moment, but hearing all that information, it does sound defeating, as if there's nothing for us to do, right? Nothing that we can
yeah,
do, right? And to a point, right? Like there is that level of helplessness at this state
yeah,
point. But we do have a lot of information, and I think this is where the internet, the shared economy has evolved. You have AI, you have
yeah,
ChatGPT, where you have access to this information now to say, you know what, this is what's happening. What are the things that I can do to ensure my health is as best as it is, right? What can
yeah,
I do on a daily
yeah,
basis? And I think that kind of
yeah,
brings back to this video here, right? Where
yeah,
sleeping north, all of a sudden certain things are aligned in your body, certain
yeah.
ailments or like sicknesses that you have. You're doing
This
all
is
these little
yeah,
things, right? And
yeah,
you can adjust your feed, just like how that YouTube short was on my feed, right? You can have that on your feed. You can start unsubscribing or blocking all the stuff that you don't want to see as best as possible. Obviously, they're going to force some things to you, but as
yeah,
best as
yeah,
possible, you tailor make your feed to do so many little things on a daily basis. You adjusting your bed due north, if that's the thing within your room and you adjust your room, all of a sudden now you don't have to do that ever again until you move. And if that's something that
yeah,
betters you 1% or, on your health
yeah,
for the
yeah,
rest of your life, you put
yeah,
enough of those together, that compounding, all of a sudden you've been able to do a lot more. So I think there's a lot of good. I do want to mention that because we're hearing it. And yes, the WTO, I remember bringing that up in business school when they're talking about the world trade and free trade, and you sign this agreement and that agreement, and they step in to make sure that the trades are fair and all this stuff. And I'm like, man, if that makes sense, how is it that Africa is the poorest country but it's the richest in resources, if the fair trade was happening and that was there to ensure that the equal value was being had, how does that make sense? And what we just read in that class that one time was how, oh, well, they import dirt and whatever. I'm like, why do they import dirt? We talk about coltan being needed in Apple, in phones, electronics. They get that from the Congos, but they don't import the diamonds. What they ended up doing through the world trade is import the dirt, supposedly, and the dirt apparently has these minerals in there, but the world trade is making sure and sanctioning and doing all the other stuff that they're going to do to make sure the dirt comes in, and they're paying for African dirt. However, it's all the minerals that they need in order to, and so and then we talked about, the corruption. This is to your point of the global point. The corruption, Africa and all these countries within Africa are corrupt because of the politicians and so forth. And then I asked the professor in that class too, I said, when we talk about corruption, to me, you have to ask yourself, who's benefiting from the corruption, right? And your camera is doing that thing. If you want to check the recording. Yeah. You have to ask yourself, like, who's benefiting from the corruption? And who's incentivized, who's paying for it? That is where the corruption is. But we're talking about these countries. But that's a topic for a whole nother time. So we'll leave it there. That was the health and harmony. I think we could wrap it on that one there. Moving over to our fourth segment, the foundations and frameworks. Okay, and the topic for this one, the title is The Silent Power, Observation as a Generational Super Skill. Interesting. So the title...
Go again? Yeah.
So here's the question for this. Are we losing the skill that builds emotional intelligence? So is that a yes question? Is that a no question? And some context?
How would we define emotional intelligence? Because there's so many different definitions. I want to make sure that there's some meeting of the minds, that we're talking about the same idea. I have to get up again. Sorry.
Yeah, no, your camera is good from my side. I see it as fine.
No, it's the recording, but it's recording.
Okay. Yeah, guys, like I was saying, this is the second episode. The first episode, we kind of just talked about getting the things out there conceptually, the concepts. This is just, we're going to get through no matter what. And we're going to look back at this and laugh and smile and say, we told you so. That's what
it's not that bad. I look back at what? It's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. So I apologize to the viewers for my getting up like 3 times now. But I just want to say something here. We've been working on this whole design for some time because we decided not to pay an external business like subscription so we can stream. So Rodel did most of the work. I just come up with some of the ideas, but most of the design and all the animation that you see happening, Rodel did that all from scratch. So all of it is we just use open source. Well, you didn't do every single thing, but we just kind of thought about a particular set of open source software, and so
software,
in our
that's an understatement. That we did so much work.
Yeah,
I'll tell you right now, to balance
and
the
AI,
sound and to figure out AI, and then to really make our messaging clear. And also, this is a podcast that is happening. We're not in the same room, right? Most of the podcasts that you see where people are doing, they put on a camera, they have 2 mics that attach to that, and they're in the same room. That's all that it is, right? So we have so many things in store.
A lot of technology in
a lot of different stuff.
And we'll show it. We'll definitely share what we have learned. And we're not going to segue into this. We're going to keep it 100 of what we're doing. But all the people will share with our Patreon and all that. They will definitely share all of the new things that we've learned while we're doing this, because a lot of people, one of our goal is to create value for our listeners, right? So our viewers and people who are here is for us to grow together in technology, AI, trading and blockchain technology. So we're going to go through a lot of those things: framework thinking, systems approach, ways to solve complex problems. So these are some of the things that Rodal and I will definitely help our community with when we get there. This is just the
1000%.
first.
1000%. Oh yeah, gotta share again for you guys that are new. Here's the foundation and framework info card. Right, pause the video, check that out, and moving on to moving on to the short for this one. This is Robert Greene, for those of you guys who don't know, author of 48 Laws of Power and Mastery. So let's hear what he has to say on this one.
Skill that you can have in the work world, in the business world, and in life is knowing how to observe people and not be so wrapped up in yourself. If you become an astute observer of the people around you, you will have this, the game will be much easier to manage, right? Important skill that you can have in
Okay. All right.
So
Did you choose the thing that you know that I'm going to agree with? Because all of these things, this that sounds so. Okay, go ahead.
are you is astute observer? That was the thing. Is that like a superpower? To be able to be in a room, understand what's going on. I think I think of a lot of moments like that. For example, I think you mentioned a party one time that you had been at, and just watching what's going on and seeing how certain people were moving there. All of a sudden, you leave the party and something happens and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So to being have all that, enjoying yourself and enjoying your time, but also having that awareness. I don't want to say self-awareness, but awareness. To see some subtleties that people are not really picking up on. So I think it is somewhat of a superpower. And so I'll start off by asking you this. Did your generation, we'll go generation first in this side. Did your generation actively train social awareness, or did you just pick it up by being around people?
If you grew up I would say pick it up, but I will expand on that. So I can't speak for everyone, but I can speak for most people who have a similar experience or a shared experience. It depends on where you grew up, right? If you grew up in Jamaica, I was born in Kingston, Jamaica. I kind of grew up in Kingston. They sent us in the countryside of St. Andrew, which is not Kingston, but it's very close, right? And so I came back down to Kingston. If you grew up in Kingston, self-awareness is self-survival. It's right. You have to be aware of what's going on. Depends if you live in certain areas in Jamaica, right? And I'm sure that is the same for a lot of people who grew up in urban areas, right? So that's my answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, because I would say, you know what? I changed my answer. It's along the same line, but I'm gonna add a little more emphasis on. I think it's true because if you went outside, we'll say, be careful, right? Like,
but you have self-awareness from growth. And again, the younger generation, especially the ones that are like 18, 19, that they don't play outside. They don't know what outside is.
Okay.
They don't.
That's true.
My generation I was the last generation born in 95. Last generation to know what it was like pre-internet, to have actually had gone to your friend's door and knock on your doors to ask them to come out and be outside and play all these games.
Okay.
So they do not.
Wow.
It's going back home. It's being on their internet, calling their 3-ways or FaceTiming friends. But in person, they got to put themselves out there. They don't know how to do that. A lot of them.
I see.
And I do speak on that from an academic perspective as well. When I was an academic advisor for the university I worked for, the COVID years, nobody was able to go out. That's when everything was shut down. And so as far as schooling, their grade 11 and grade 12 year was essentially online and in home. And then the world opened back up and they went to university, and now in this super social setting. They didn't have the skills to cope with that to cope with life and the awkwardness and being able to advocate for yourself. Like when you went out before, pre-COVID, pre-internet, you had to put yourself out there. You had to be okay with a certain level of rejection and so forth. And I think the reason why I related to this is that, I don't know, actually, I'm kind of torn, because when I think of self-awareness, I feel like the elder
Wait, is it
generation.
self-awareness? Wait,
That's the
is it
thing.
is it self-awareness or is it awareness? Because I think what he's talking about is
Awareness.
it's awareness. It's not just awareness, like you're aware and you're the beneficiary or you're benefiting from the awareness. He's talking about, I think, we can listen again and see if I'm right. I think he's talking about the ability to stop thinking about you and start actually focusing on others and be aware of what they're going through, as opposed to you just being aware. But the result of being aware is to protect self. I think he's talking about like being aware of others and kind of use that as some kind of.
I agree. And here's the thing I would say about awareness. I feel like the younger generations are more self-aware. I don't know. That's something I'd have to debate, but I think the older generations have higher awareness. But
Okay. Yeah.
this is what I'm initially thinking, and the reason why I say that is,
I think you're onto something.
Self-awareness, for example, I don't think any other generations, the older generations, did not look at themselves as much as our generation has. With the number, with the selfies and the mirrors everywhere and the videos, we've seen ourselves more than any generations have ever.
It's self-absorption. Is it being self-absorbed the same as self-aware? Yeah, that's still self-aware. Because I think self-awareness also recognize that you're being self-absorbed.
Right.
And maybe you wouldn't be. So I don't know. I think there's a distinction between self-absorbed, looking
and right.
Right.
You're right.
I'm not making a judgment. It's not a judgment call. I'm just looking at it like a science, like in a scientific way. Is it the same? That's a question for you.
No, it isn't. It isn't the same, but
okay.
It's why I think we're more self-aware too, is because each aspect of our life is broken down. So in one way, as much as it can be a positive thing, the self-confidence of kids have gone down, because you're looking at social and you're looking at yourself like, man, I don't measure up to these things. Everything is tailor-made. Like, for example, the idea of blush, for example, the women who have the red makeup and stuff is now advanced to the point, but it's actually off a biological understanding that when someone has red, right, it's more attractive, they're in the conversation and whatever. All of a sudden, even as far as the mannerisms of what is considered conservative, like how they would hold their hand to their chest or certain things, body language studies will tell you, right? A woman that's more reserved, if you're reserved, you're not feeling too confident, you close up. And for the man, to be able to, it's inviting in certain ways and certain biological things like this, right? Now the younger generations have reverse engineered all that. Social media, TikTok, all the trends, this, that, every single aspect of what they're doing is manufactured.
Yeah.
So they understand that how they're being perceived in any room and how to project themselves in a way, from their shoes to their clothes to their walk to their hair to saying in videos, knowing politically what's the correct thing to say and how to not say this. And I believe that we can't even say certain words anymore. So I wonder, I'll say it like this.
That makes sense.
You say one thing wrong, you're ready to be canceled. So you need to understand what room you're in and what word you're saying, how you're saying it, how you look, who you're looking at. When you go to the gym, can't be looking at anybody else, or you get caught in the camera, and right, like you're operating at a certain level of awareness.
Yeah.
But
okay, let me push back on that a little bit, because I think there's some air gap between those things. But I will concede that you have to be aware, in the general sense of the word aware, that you acknowledge something, right? That I'm in this space and I need to do certain things to garner a particular type of reaction and all that. But how I would push back lightly on that is that really self-awareness, or you can tell me if I'm doing it, am I inventing or going back to my generation where when somebody said self-awareness, it seems like it has a positive connotation. There's something positive about being self-aware,
I agree.
where what we're
agree.
seeing, you're aware, but it's something self-absorbing and unreal, fake. And this again, it's not I'm not, so don't put anything in the comment, right? I'm just looking at this from as a viewer, a spectator. Like,
No, it makes sense. No, I get
so
it.
that's
Like, how much,
where would we,
how aware are you of your surrounding? If you have, if you have 10 cameras, right? Surveillance room, you have 10 cameras and 6 of them are pointed towards you from different angles. How aware are you of your surroundings and what's happening outside? I kind of look at it like that from a self-awareness, right? You can, if you're focused on you and you're aware of you and how you're perceived in all these different ways,
are you still aware?
You're effectively taking away of some of that awareness that you could have elsewhere on you and how you look and how you, right? You're taking away from that. So there is a scale, if you will, right?
I think it's a gradation. Yeah, I was about to say that, right? There's a weight, so it's not like something like a discrete thing, something that you can count. I think it's more of a degree, like it's more of, you're more self-aware than you're not, because I think like this is good for the generation gap, and I think people my age might tend to agree with me somewhat. Where when we say the person is aware, usually we kind of think that there's some good things, like he's aware, so he has certain awareness, so he doesn't say things to hurt others and so on. Would he still be aware if he knows, he is acknowledging, right, that is hurting somebody, or just focusing on him or herself at the expense of others? Like, for example, if you go out right now, right? If I were to just go downtown right now, I will see 2 people walking or sitting in a restaurant, and both of them are on their phones. Yeah, the girl is looking at her face, and the guy is checking out whatever. Is that awareness? You know what I mean? Like, so as you rightly
you would
said,
say that she's not self-aware. In that case, referencing the surrounding, that she's not aware of her surroundings, which is outside of herself, because you're saying that she wouldn't be doing that.
But a person who is self-absorbed, is that person self-aware? Because there's 2 things we're talking about here.
You're right.
We have to make sure that we're talking about awareness and self-awareness, and then we start talking about if you're self-absorbed, does that mean that you are aware, right? You see, so definitions, we'd have to talk about what do you mean to make sure that we're talking about the same thing.
And
but just
you're aware
colloquially,
of yourself on what you want,
right?
Because the selfish person, they always know what they're going to, right? Like, how can I benefit in this situation? They're utmost clear, right? I don't want this. I need you to be over there. Right now, you're in my space. I need my thing. You know what? It's a disregard for everyone else, but it's showing the highest level of awareness to you.
Okay. Yeah, you're right.
I don't know, but I'm
think
not,
that makes sense.
condoning it. It's
it's not clear. It's not.
But what
clear.
Right. But what we can agree on is
so
that
people, please help us out in the comments if you have a better, clearer, more clarity, can add clarity to what we're trying to do in this one.
Right. I agree, and I think. Yeah, so I think I think we can both agree, and I think all generations in this can agree that there is something to be said about being in a room, kind of getting over yourself and seeing what's going on, right? Obviously, how you act on it is important. But I think what he's actually, let's just hear it one more time. I just want to
Most
hear it.
important
Yeah.
skill that the most important
Most important skill.
Yeah,
skill that
So
you can have
most, it's not about
in
right. So let's see here.
the work world, in the business world, and in life is knowing how to observe people and not be so wrapped up in yourself. If you become
Learning
Right.
how to observe people and not being so wrapped up in yourself,
people.
which is
Yeah.
around what,
So
yeah.
yeah. So he's not talking about the people who are aware of themselves, that self-absorption and there's that I in my generation, and I think I don't want to say as if there's a mutually exclusive thing in my generation, but it's not in yours or some other generation. By the way, I'm Generation X. Okay, so yeah, in my generation, I think when we use the word aware, just the word aware, like you're not aware, we have this thing, there's something else not said. There's an assumption that if you're aware for a good reason.
That's
And it's not,
interesting. That's you
yeah,
know why
it's
it's
not,
interesting? Because I only think of awareness as a negative. And I think
I think you're thinking about
there's a
self-absorption.
cultural and a black thing as well
Yeah,
too, growing up within Canada, in my experience. Because in the
okay,
times I'm thinking about being aware, and the times that I've heard that, I've heard it in the context where you're too smart for your own good, right? Like this
yes,
kind of
yeah,
awareness that I've come across. It's always, and I only till later on, like as a kid, I start to piece together what that I understand that now to be, or how I see that now is different than how I understood it then. I didn't think anything of it as a kid. But I think anytime somebody mentions awareness, it's almost as if they have an intent and you're aware of the intent.
Oh, that this is definitely a generation gap. I think, in my opinion, people always say, "In my opinion," because they try to shame you for to say anything against it. In my opinion, it's my opinion, and anyway. But in my opinion, I'm going to do it. So don't say anything negative about my opinion. It's mine. Usually we're talking about. No, it's not. I don't want to give it too much weight, but sometimes we'll say that person is very much aware. What we're talking about is like the opposite of absent-mindedness, right? You should be more aware. What we're saying, so aware usually mean in a good sense, right? And so even sometimes we'll say, again, it could be cultural. So I don't want to extend my cultural connection and kind of maps it onto everybody else's idea. But I think, so I'm using the word I think, or when my generation said, he's so aware, it's usually, the connotation is usually a good one, because it's just a position that you kind of, like we're comparing that with absent-mindedness and just not thinking and even dumb, right? If you're allowed to say words like that anymore. So if we say is self-conscious, right? It's a similar word, but I think self-conscious rather than self-awareness. But self-awareness, it's in itself usually is a positive connotation also, right?
Yeah,
All of those things are usually
it
in
is.
my generation.
I'm curious to know.
I don't know.
Yeah, no, I hear you. I'm curious to know if my generation also sees it as the self-aware has more of a negative connotation. Self-conscious, I've heard, right? But I think that's an interesting one. So we'll leave it to the comments for that. As far as generational trigger, what I had here, younger generations grew up with digital dialogue, texting instead of talking, emojis instead of expressions, ghosting instead of confrontation. Ghosting meaning like you text somebody.
What's ghosting? What's that?
Yeah, so it's a term
Like,
to say
don't
that
call.
you're pursuing somebody, usually in a romantic way, but it could be
Okay.
friendship as well. But you're pursuing somebody, you have a friendship, and then you just stop texting. You just go dark 0, dark 40, whatever they call it.
Okay.
You don't answer, they don't hear
Ghosting.
from you, right? You don't
Okay.
know
All
what
right.
happened.
The
They don't
ghost.
explain it.
Okay. Okay.
So our generation is more likely
From
to
the
ghost.
context, I could from the context, I could kind of figure out what it is, but I didn't know that what it actually means because I've heard that before. And from the context, you kind of it's not good, like ghost, like disappear
Yeah.
type thing.
And we're like,
But I
and
didn't
this is
know.
it.
I didn't know it's actually in a romantic setting in general.
Yeah, and
did
usually in the
not know that.
pursuit on like the dating apps and stuff like that, if somebody ghosted you,
Oh,
it's like,
okay. Oh,
okay, yeah,
okay.
you guys were talking, you thought everything was good, you thought it was going well, and they just, blocked you. Now you don't see their
Oh.
profile, all of that stuff.
Do they
So
put a ghost profile? Like
I
they
don't
should put
know.
a
I'm
move
in a
themselves into the ghost.
happy relationship, so I got to make sure that that's clear that people know I'm not on that. But for what I've been told.
Okay.
So
Right.
we're likely, so younger generations are more likely to ghost instead of confrontation, right? Going to see somebody and say, hey, which I actually agree with. And I think that's, I think it's fitting for foundations and framework. I believe.
Wait. 1 second. Why did you choose confrontation as opposed to dialogue? Or
Right.
you
So this is
understand?
where I'm
Like,
saying this is the generational
why is it?
trigger, right? Where,
Okay.
yeah. So I think that's kind of how the younger generations would see it. It's like,
Oh,
they'd
okay. I
rather
see.
ghost versus having confrontation. The dialogue is actually more, and this is what I was going to
Yeah.
get to.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Okay.
think the elder generations, I like elder better than the elder generations, understand, and this is something I really want to get into. We'll save it, but I believe the elder generations understand what kind of conversations are meant for what kind of conversation venues, if you will. My generation either ghost you entirely or have these long conversations over text. That's not a text conversation. That's a phone conversation. There's conversations to have in person, like face to face in the house. Conversations where you guys got to go out somewhere and not be in the house and have that conversation face to face. There are phone conversations. There are texting conversations to have over text. Some conversations aren't texting conversations. Some conversations, if you have a dispute with somebody, like especially man to man, I would say, if I have a problem, call me. If you think something's off, don't text me right? There's certain things like that I can definitely.
I think because you're born 1995 though, because as you said earlier, remember the medium of communication, crazy. Like even sometime I'm talking to Kayla and she's texting me, and I just call because I don't have much time to be consistently looking down, right? But the mode of communication is different. I understand why you would say that. I think you're kind of an old soul also. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
You do a lot of things that your generation wouldn't normally do, like read real books and all that kind of, right? Like, so you're kind of different. So you have to be careful with that one.
Yeah.
Because I think for people, I've seen Shante and Kayla and other young people text.
Yes.
Like
No.
books.
So don't get me wrong.
Like I see Kayla read a book on her phone.
Oh yeah,
like
that's
right,
what I'm saying though.
Books
That's what
on the phone, right?
yeah. So
Yeah,
we're saying
crazy.
the same thing. But I'm making
okay,
a different
okay.
point. What I'm
Okay.
saying is that's exactly what we do. I'll give you another example to show you I understand. Perfect example. One of the profs went into the staff room and was complaining about their students texting their entire class. All the time they were texting. And
Yeah.
so they were texting, and then one day she got mad and grabbed the phone and said, "Stop texting in my class." And the student was scared, like worried and right, startled would probably be the better word. And she's like, "Stop texting in my class. It's rude." Right? I put a lot of time into this stuff, and that's the idea, which we agree with. Somebody puts a lot of time into the lectures. You're sitting close to the front of the class and you're just texting. That's disrespectful. You know what?
Yeah.
The student
She was
said,
taking notes.
she said, "Yeah, I was taking notes on my phone. Like
Right.
I text faster on my phone than I actually do on a keyboard." Which
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
makes sense, right? Because you look at the
Yeah.
generation, that is their tool. They didn't have a typewriter.
Yeah.
They didn't have the
Yeah.
mechanical keyboard that we have. We still use, gamers
Yeah.
use it, but they didn't
Yeah.
learn to do that. But they did
Exactly.
with their thumbs, and that's how they type. And some people type really fast, so that's how she takes her
Yeah.
notes. And so that's a generational difference, right?
Yeah,
You start to see
there are
that.
some differences. Yeah, there
However,
are differences.
so I agree with that wholeheartedly. My generation,
Okay.
more likely.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of those conversations that are not meant for text. And I'm making a point to my generation that we need to understand what I believe the elder generations understood is that certain conversations are meant for certain venues. You had something to say that was bad news to somebody, you had to go pull up on them, see them, go to their house and say, hey, can I come in? Right? Can we talk? Can we sit down? Can we talk about this? Not all of them are meant to
true.
text. And we would text
Yeah.
a whole thing saying this happened and this, and then we have to wait for someone else to reply. No, that's a phone conversation.
Yeah.
If you can't make it,
Oh,
or a
that-
text
okay.
conversation or in-person conversation, or some of those conversations is, hey, I haven't seen you in a while. Let's go sit down somewhere. Right?
Yeah.
Or, hey, let's hop on FaceTime. Like there's more now. There's more modes of communication. But some of the traditional, we have to stop. We have to understand what is better for which, because I feel like, especially now where our connection with people is starting to become more difficult or more lost. Somebody said this, and I'll wrap it up here for the foundations, and I'll let you give the last word.
Okay.
When I went to the boarding school there, Stansted College, great experience in a lot of ways. One of the this girl that was in my class, she had her final paper in philosophy, and her paper was about technology, and her thesis was that modern technology has made us closer to the people far and far from the people close to us.
That's so true.
And I thought that was quite the insight back then. And that's
that
kind
was-
of what I'm getting to here, right? Which is,
Yeah.
what did the older generations, where that wasn't so intrusive, what did they understand? And how can we stop that distance from the people close to us? And I think one of those things is understanding that certain communication are meant for certain type of, you get what I'm saying. So
Bars. Okay. Okay. I have to do this thing again.
Yeah.
1 second. Yeah.
So yeah,
We
you want
have
to
to do some-
yeah.
It's gone?
No, yeah, it's gone.
Okay. Yeah.
So you have the last talking too long. On
As usual, I'm a closer. Michael Jordan, even that should change. Kyrie, right? And anyway, somebody else that younger than Kyrie. I think even that's going to change. And that I'm talking about is what is going to be. What you mean by
Move a bit.
close?
Yeah.
Okay, go over here.
Yeah, you're good.
What's good? I think we're gonna define what we mean by close again, because now we're using like augmented reality and AI and all that. It's gonna, I think closeness is gonna feel like you're there, because right now we're gonna come up with not better, but it's gonna be as close as possible to you being in front of a person. But I agree with you. They're still that doesn't mean that they're not gonna be the same different mode of communication, and we have to choose one over another. But I think very, very soon you want to talk to somebody and you can be remember what we're doing in blockchain, we're looking at the metaverse. That's here right now, much, much better, where you're going to even feel the person touch you, tactile responses and things like that. So I think even that's going to be changed very, very, very soon. I think most of these things are already there, but the application, as we normally say in our conversation, the future is here. It's just not well distributed, right? So a lot of stuff. But I agree with you that we need to select the different mode of communication. In all communication, I think older people like me, we do things like that. But I think it's out of necessity, because a lot of us can't text. I recently found something out like I didn't know.
That's interesting.
The older you get, even when you try to use an iPad, like your finger has more magnetism in it than I do. So a lot of older people, when they're touching a button,
Is that a fact?
you can just touch it. Yeah, you can touch it, and
We're
when
gonna
you
have
touch,
to-
just
let's check that. We can.
so we have to touch it more. Like the older person may have to touch it a couple more times. So yeah, do some research. You can do some research on that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's what I heard. Some older person was saying that. I'm saying, really? So now I start touching things with more force, right? So and if you touch and it doesn't work, then you either think it's not working, so you get frustrated maybe, and you just say, call me, right? Or they're trying to type and they have to take too long. I'm an anomaly for that because I type everything, but I don't type one at a time. I use the thing that you can just drag your finger all over, and I don't use mouse and stuff like that. So I'm a little bit weird like that. So I don't think I represent my generation in that regard. I even you use mouse. I haven't used a mouse in like maybe 10 years. Ever since there was touchpad, I've never used mouse ever.
Yeah.
So I'm weird like that.
Let's
So
see.
yeah, let's see. Oh, we'll put a AI person in here.
How do you want to say it?
No, you ask the question. I don't want to
Younger
know that. I already know.
generations, Magnetism in finger.
Does an old person finger? I don't know. You come up with a sentence. You want to find it out. I don't want to find it out anymore. Yeah. Go.
Gotta be. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard that older people have to touch it more forcefully or something like that. The magnetism.
That's it. I heard something like that as well too. Yeah. Anyways, that's a deeper one. We'll get into that because this.
You know what we need to do? What we're gonna do right there. We're gonna put a AI person there, and then we can say, "Is that true?" And the AI person is supposed to talk back to us and stuff like that. We'll do that. I'm working on it. It's almost done.
Yeah, definitely. And then we'll close it now. We'll move into, not close it, but we got a lot more to do. Culture and connection. This is the fifth one. This category, I like this category. I think it's a good one to end on, just kind of seeing what is going on in the world, a more culturally relevant topic, keep it lighter to close it out. And so let's see what we have here. But yeah, I do like that topic. Self-awareness.
What topic? What's self-awareness.
Just to close out the self-awareness. I like.
Oh,
there's I think people the different generations. I really look forward to people giving their insight into that.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be great.
So this one here, let's see. If you're just friends, why are you paying like a boyfriend? So I know we don't really want to go into too much. It says here, if you're just friends, why are you paying like you're a boyfriend?
What does that mean?
Well, that's where the context is coming. You gotta let me get to the punch. So this is about kind of the dating culture and how different generations have changed and relationships have changed now. We'll just jump into the short. Whatever comes to mind, we'll touch on that. I have some questions for you.
Okay.
We'll follow up. So yeah.
I have all the answers. I'm GPT. I'm Roy TP.
Yeah. So let's see. So this one here, I'll just rewind it. Let's see. And I think we're good. So he says, "Is this your friend?"
Is your best friend? You never. How long are you
gonna
be him on like this? You're paying this whole bill? Don't pay the whole bill. You're splitting as friends. As friends, best friends.
Oh yes, because the idea is that so the reason I chose this one, I actually forgot that it's swearing, which is interesting because again, this is still as much as we're doing this podcast, you're still my dad, so it's awkward that I hear the swearing. I feel like I did something wrong.
You did something wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, you feel like
Yeah, that's but
I'm religious.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
I got you.
him, the idea is to show. I wanted to speak to what the modern dating scene is now, a little bit.
I would
think that's
know.
good. Yeah, no, I think. Anyways, let's see. Let's play it here.
Everybody say, if he pays for the bill, he's a woman. They said it, not me. You want him? Hey, you want him? You got it, huh? Hey, sit next to her. Come sit next to her. Empty chair in here. Hey, if she's your best friend, she'll understand. Sit right here. Sit down right there, my boy. I love you, boy. Enjoy your life, man. Were your best friends happy? You're not happy? Is that your man?
Yeah. So this one.
Yeah, you're gonna have to paraphrase all it.
Yeah. So it's the idea that I wanted to speak to, because I have it here. Some of the things. What was the chivalry? The idea that the man is the man as far as needing to pick up the bill and do the drinks, and open the car door and do all that stuff. My generation, the younger generations, feels like that chivalry stuff is dead, and partly because of the idea that women are saying that a man has to bring XYZ to the table before anything and everything else. So I seen this video. The reason I put this video, I'm trying to remember exactly why, but the reason why I think this video would be an interesting topic for us is just to see if you had any original thoughts to this. Because I look at this and I'm happy that the comedian did that, because a lot of good brothers are in the friend zone trying to make it work, but trying to navigate this modern dating culture, they can't figure it out. They can't get out. They say it was much easier to find love back in the day because things were clear. And you see guys like this that, can't really make their way out and stuff like that. So.
Yeah, like I'm definitely not an expert in relationships or anything like that. I'd much rather talk about code or blockchain or AI models, how to use them, or business development and things like that.
I got it.
But,
yeah. Let me ask
yeah,
you. I got a simpler
but,
question.
but I can try. I can
Okay.
chime in a little bit.
Mhm.
Like I've seen, I think that everything has changed, and again with relationships. I think the older relationship we didn't have as many distractions either, right?
Mhm.
There wasn't all that 10,000 different fake reality TV where people are saying there was soap, right? And a lot of older people my age used to look at soap and then pretend
Soap
like you
operas,
must be like Victor. Yeah, soap opera. And you must act and be rich like say
Victor Newman.
Victor Newman in Young and Restless way back. And I think a similar thing is happening, but on steroids right now, where you can see 5 million different shows where everybody is a super girl, right? Or a guy you have 10 I'm in my basement. I'm in my garage. You see this Lamborghini here, right? Everybody is like that. So it's a lot of people believe all that stuff, like it's true. So they just adds to the issue and the problem. So I don't think anything is real.
Mhm.
So relationship must be. I'm just imagine. I don't know. Finding a person now, it must be so much more difficult, because if you find somebody that you like, but the person isn't rich, and the person isn't handsome, and the person is not an entrepreneur, right? All of a sudden is not enough because of all the narratives that you're supposed to be rich and so on. And if a woman has a lot of money, more money, then it means that she doesn't need a man. But if a man has a lot of money, then right, you should pick up the bill, right?
Right.
I don't
So-
think that's changed. I think that is the same narrative from back then, though.
Yeah,
I
that
just
part
think
has. Yeah. So let me ask you. Yeah.
And again,
So I think I
I
found a
don't.
better way because I think this is good. I still think this is a good topic for us because again, I don't really. As both of you and I committed relationships long time. That's not really the aspect. I'm not trying to go into the single space, but what I am thinking, and as you were saying that, your grandkids, my kids, will have to.
You have kids?
No, my kids when they.
Not yet.
I'm so future focused. Everything I'm doing is just I'm there. What I do now in today's time is for that, is to fill that out. So that's my ambition. That's how much I'm living in the future. I speak about it now in that way. But they're gonna have to navigate a world of like this. And so if our grandkids, let's just say fast forward, and they come to you and say, hey grandpa, like what advice would you give me on how to do this? Like he likes a girl, how would you pursue it? Would you say the ways that you know and how you've done it? Because I think they would say you were a gallus. Is that the correct term?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Like would you?
Yeah.
Is it a
When-
different
when you're
world?
on
You
the-
just concede and just say, hey, I don't know anymore, or would you offer some advice that you would consider to be traditional wisdom to make sure that he's not
Yeah, but
in situations like that?
yeah, because I think certain thing transcends time, right? Like honesty, right? So if you really think she's a good, let's say I'm a, see, I'm assuming that it's a grandson, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if it was a grandchild, let's say it's a grandson, just start off with that. I would say something like, you have to be honest and treat the woman with respect. Open doors if she want, like I don't know if you're allowed to say these things, but treat the woman with respect because that's right. If the woman is walking with a big heavy bag, what are you gonna do? Just leave your girl with the bag and say, okay, well you're equal now? No, you're physically. I love science and things that's measurable. Like, and most men are stronger than most women. So if you're a man and a woman goes to the shopping, to the grocery store, I would, like you, if I see you and your girlfriend, I'm not going to call her name, I'm not going to dox her right now, and I saw her walking with the heavy bags and you're just, I said, what's wrong with you? You understand? Like, so those type of things, I think, I will do regardless of the laws and all that stuff. I'm not going to say, well, she's a woman and she's equal like you, so she should be bringing the big bags and stuff like that. You're the man, you do it. Right? That's that. I will never stop saying those fundamental things. Right? Am I saying that if a woman is equally qualified, she shouldn't get equal amount of money? In that instance, I'm a feminist for those reasons. But for the other side, for those reasons, I'm out. I'm not playing that. That's just not my game. I don't care about that. None of that.
No, that makes sense. So I think that's it, really. I don't know what else to touch. I feel like we kind of got to that. I think I'll just speak to the section that is culture and connection. And let's just go back to that. This segment is to really just go to anything that's happening kind of in the world, nothing really too specific. I wanted to keep it light with the comedic aspect of it.
Yeah.
In the future, though, they won't have any swearing in it. I didn't even realize that it had swearing until like now as we're doing it. It didn't register because that's kind of awkward, to be honest. A little bit awkward for me, but I think it's good. It's a good topic. It allow us to kind of get into a whole bunch of pop culture, or also it's also the segment that for anyone else that has ideas that don't necessarily fit in some of the other categories, but are really interested to see what our opinion is. We will be having for example, our Patreon, and to be able to suggest certain topics. And again, if anything, we'll have it in the culture and connection and kind of speak to it there. So a lot of different things. So that's it for the 5 segments. I'll just pull it back up. This is the Generation Gap Bridging the Gap podcast. We went through our 5 signature segments. This is episode 2. Really, this is the episode where we're getting the kinks out, right? You saw a lot of different stuff. You're seeing the raw start of something. and
Yeah.
what it takes, right? This is a father-son dynamic. This is a son-father dynamic. This is, you know, one astute individual and bring up the things that I know, somebody else in a respectful manner across multiple disciplines. And it's not just us in this conversation, it is you guys as well. As we mentioned at the beginning, father, son, daughter, cousin, colleague. That's what you guys serve to us. So you are the other person at this table, and we take what you say and we are going to go through it, apply it, and we're going to bridge these gaps. That's the point of all this stuff. So you got anything to say as we, Generation Gap, Bridging the Gap podcast?
No, I'm just, the only thing I have to say is that just want to thank everyone who show up first. I would say this is the first. This is the second. I think this is the first one because the other times we were working out the technologies, putting all those things together, and we spent a really long time going through the purpose, vision, and mission. I think we spend more time doing purpose, mission, vision, and then Roydell, he took that and then create different models and put it in AI. Let's kind of streamline all of the content and make sure that it's in line with what we believe. So whatever we're saying, we just make sure that the content is being in alignment with that. So we just want to thank everyone who show up for our first podcast, and we hope to give you guys a lot of value. So we're going to be I just want to go about a few things that we're going to do. We're going to touch on like AI, the real use of AI in terms of what you can do with it. That's what I do. That's what we do, I should say. Business, different type of business models, trading, different. Roydell is like an expert in setting up trading accounts, platforms, and stuff like that. So, we will be going into algorithmic trading way in the future.
History,
we're going to
legacy, legacy as well.
That's the next part.
Right? No. That's value. Value inventors, foundation
value
within that. So legacy, we're going to do a lot more history as far as bring up certain things within my childhood and my dad's parenthood, right? And kind of speak to, were those things intentional, unintentional, what we would do, how that impacted now, a whole bunch of different stuff. So we're going to really get into that.
I will also bring eventually bring Shante, Kayla,
the other siblings, my siblings.
Other siblings.
And the kids.
Yeah.
So we'll get into it. But the intro was, hey, look, this is episode, technically, as my dad said, the episode 1. But we're going to figure it out on the fly, right? Every episode, you're just going to see the progression and you're going to see the organization of how the podcast is formatted. You'll be able to find specific segments that if you take a liking to or you're getting a lot of value from, you can either watch the playlist from start to finish as found in the full Generation Gap podcast format, but you can also watch it similarly just through the specific segment. So you can just watch all the foundation and frameworks from 1 to X, whatever it may be, 1 to episode 46, and you can watch all of it that way. And even as far as the YouTube shorts, all of our shorts, as you'll see, will have a specific number, color-coded, and connected to that specific segment. So you can either see a short if you're watching that short, like that short, like that part. You can find specifically exactly that segment, or you can go ahead and watch the full episode. It'd be up to you, and that's what we're creating. So we really thought this through to deliver the best value to you in the way that you would like to consume it, how you would like to consume it, either by shorts, snippets like that way, longer form as far as the podcast. You want to listen to it, we'll be on other platforms soon enough. And so a lot to come as we finish off 2025, going into 2026.
2026,
Big things coming. So that's it for me. Generation Gap, let's bridge these gaps.
Let's bridge these gaps.
I can say that a lot nicer, but hey. All right.
All right. Peace.
See you next year.
I have to hit the road. 6:30.
Oh, yeah. You gotta go.
Yeah.
All
okay.
Right.
All right. Have a good day, people. Thanks.
All right, later.